Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Vigilant Watch, staring at the screens that showed empty space. The monitoring station had been his home for 3 years now. It sat at the very edge of the solar system, watching for trouble that might come from the stars. Most days were quiet. Today felt different. "Captain, we're getting something strange on the long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Amy Carter. She was young but smart, and Jake trusted her instincts. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of strange?" "Ships, sir. Lots of them, coming from the direction of Vega." Amy's voice was steady, but Jake could hear the worry in it. "The computer says there are thousands of them." Commander Ben Parker looked up from his own station. Ben was older than both of them, with gray hair and scars from the Centauri border wars. He had seen real fighting, unlike most humans these days. "Thousands? That's not a patrol. That's a fleet." Jake felt his stomach tighten. In the 200 years since humans joined the Galactic Council, Earth had been safe. The Treaty of Sol made sure of that. Any species that attacked Earth would face every human ship in the galaxy. It was a promise written in blood and signed by every major power. "Can you identify them?" Jake asked. Amy worked at her controls for several minutes. The main screen flickered and changed, showing distant shapes moving through space. They were still too far away to see clearly, but the computer was already analyzing their energy signatures. "Korthic Empire ships," Amy said quietly. "Definitely. Korthic." Ben cursed under his breath. The Korthic were known throughout the galaxy as warriors. They had been expanding their territory for decades, taking worlds from weaker species. But they had always avoided human space. Everyone knew humans were protected by the treaty. "How many ships?" Jake asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. "The computer is still counting, but it looks like over 3,000. Amy's hands were shaking slightly as she spoke. "Captain, they're not stopping. They're headed straight for the inner solar system." Jake stared at the screen. 3,000 ships was more than enough to destroy Earth. The planet had some defenses, but nothing that could stop a fleet that size. Unless... "Amy, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we have a large Korthic fleet approaching. Then send another message to all human ships in the area. Use the emergency codes." "Which emergency codes, sir?" Jake took a deep breath. He had hoped he would never have to say these words. "Send code Terra Prime. Tell them Terra Prime is threatened. All souls return home." Amy's eyes went wide. She had learned about code Terra Prime in training, but it had never been used. Not once in over a century. It was the call that would bring every human ship racing back to Earth. "Sir, are you sure?" she asked. "Send it now," Jake said firmly. As Amy began transmitting the message, Ben walked over to stand beside Jake. "You know what this means," the older man said quietly. "If you're wrong about their intentions, we'll have caused the biggest military mobilization in human history for nothing." Jake pointed at the screen, where the Korthic fleet continued its steady approach toward Earth. "Look at them, Ben. They're not coming to talk. No one brings 3,000 warships to a diplomatic meeting." The communication system crackled to life. Messages began pouring in from across human space. Ships that had been exploring distant stars suddenly changed course. Mining operations in asteroid belts started evacuating their crews. Even civilian vessels began asking for instructions. "Captain," Amy said, "I'm getting responses from ships all over the galaxy. They're all asking for confirmation of the Terra. Prime code. Confirm it," Jake said. "And Amy, send a message directly to the Korthic fleet. Tell them they are approaching protected space. Remind them of the Treaty of Sol." Amy sent the message, but Jake did not expect it to work. The Korthic had obviously made their decision already. They thought humans were weak. They thought the treaty was just words on paper. On the main screen, the Korthek fleet continued forward. Jake could see they were arranged in battle formation. These were not exploration ships or trading vessels. They were warships, built for destroying planets and killing millions of people. "Sir," Ben said, checking his own instruments, "I'm reading massive energy buildups throughout their fleet. They're charging weapons." Jake nodded grimly. The Korthek were not coming to Earth to talk or to trade. They were coming to conquer. They probably thought it would be easy. After all, humans were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful explorers and diplomats. Most species saw them as helpful, but not particularly dangerous. The Korthek were about to learn how wrong they were. "Amy, open a channel to Earth Command," Jake ordered. The face of Admiral Lisa Stone appeared on the screen. She looked tired, but her eyes were sharp and alert. "Captain Morrison, we received your Terra Prime signal. Please confirm the nature of the threat." "Admiral, we have a Korthek battle fleet of approximately 3,000 ships approaching Earth. They are in attack formation and have charged weapons. They ignored our warning about the Treaty of Soul." Admiral Stone was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Understood, Captain. A Terra Prime mobilization is now active. All human military assets are being recalled to Sol System. We estimate the first ships will arrive in 18 hours. What about the Korthek fleet? They'll reach Earth orbit in less than 12 hours. Let them come," Admiral Stone said coldly. "They want to test the Treaty of Sol. They're about to find out what happens when someone attacks Earth." The communication ended, leaving Jake staring at the tactical display. The Korthek fleet was huge, but he was starting to see other contacts. On the long-range sensors, human ships were already moving toward Earth from all directions. Not just military vessels, but cargo ships, research vessels, and even private yachts. Every human in space was coming home to defend their world. "Captain," Amy said softly, "do you really think we can stop them? 3,000 ships is a lot." Jake smiled grimly. "Amy, let me tell you something about humans that most aliens don't understand. We're peaceful because we choose to be, not because we have to be. The Korthek are about to learn the difference." Through the viewports of the Vigilant Watch, Jake could see the first human ships beginning to arrive. They came in fast, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. More ships appeared every minute, emerging from hyperspace, like angry wasps defending their hive. The Korthek had made their choice. They had decided to test humanity's resolve by attacking the one world humans would never allow to be harmed. They thought humans were weak because they had not seen them fight in over a century. That was about to change. The Treaty of Soul had been very clear about the consequences of attacking Earth. Now the Korthek would learn what those consequences looked like. Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and watched the gathering storm. Soon, the peaceful emptiness of space around Earth would become the most dangerous place in the galaxy. The Korthek wanted a war. They were about to get one they would never forget, if any of them survived to remember it. Admiral Lisa Stone stood in the command center of Arcturus Naval Base, watching the tactical display that showed the movement of every human ship in the galaxy. The Terra Prime signal had gone out 12 hours ago, and the response was beyond anything she had ever seen. "Admiral," called Commander Tony Garcia from his station, "we're getting reports from all sectors. Every human ship within 50 light years is changing course for Earth. Military, civilian, cargo, research. Everyone is coming home." Lisa nodded, but kept her eyes on the display. Red dots showed the Korthek fleet as it moved steadily toward Earth. Blue dots marked human ships racing in from all directions. There were already more blue dots than red ones, and more appeared every minute. "What's the status of the diplomatic channels?" she asked. Ambassador Jensen is meeting with the Galactic Council right now, Garcia replied. He's trying to convince the Korthik to turn back before this gets worse. Lisa did not think diplomacy would work. The Korthik had brought 3,000 warships to Earth's doorstep. That was not the action of a species interested in talking. Across the galaxy, Ambassador Carl Jensen sat in the emergency session of the Galactic Council. The great chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species, all talking at once. Fear filled the air like smoke. The Korthik fleet must withdraw immediately, Jensen said, his voice cutting through the noise. The Treaty of Sol is very clear about the consequences of attacking Earth. Sub-Commander Velther, the Korthik representative, laughed. He was a large creature with thick armor plating and sharp claws. Like all Korthik, he believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. Your precious treaty is just words, human. Velther said, we have seen your ships. We know your capabilities. You have maybe a few hundred vessels to defend your homeworld. We have 3,000. You're making a terrible mistake, Jensen warned. Humans are not as weak as you think. We have kept the peace for 2 centuries because we chose to, not because we had to. Other council members tried to speak, but Velther ignored them. Tomorrow, your Earth will belong to the Korthik Empire. Your people will serve us, and your treaty will be forgotten. Jensen stood up slowly. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard as steel. Then you have chosen your path. Remember this moment, Sub-Commander. Remember that you were warned. Meanwhile, throughout human space, ships were abandoning their missions to answer the call. Colonel Matt Williams had been leading a peacekeeping mission in the Orion Nebula when the Terra Prime signal reached him. Without hesitation, he ordered his squadron to turn around. Sir, one of his officers asked, what about the peace talks? Here, the local species are still fighting each other. They'll have to solve their own problems, Williams replied grimly. Earth is in danger. Nothing else matters now. Captain Helen Brooks was exploring an unknown star system when her communication officer picked up the signal. Her science vessel was not built for war, but she had guns, and she knew how to use them. Set course for Earth, maximum speed, she ordered, and send a message to the other exploration ships in this sector. Tell them Helen Brooks is coming home, and anyone who wants to help defend humanity is welcome to join me. By the time her ship reached the edge of the system, 15 other vessels were following her. Scientists, miners, traders, all of them had decided that defending Earth was more important than whatever they had been doing. Back in the Sol system, the first military ships were arriving. The battleship Liberty dropped out of hyperspace with Admiral Stone herself on board. Behind her came a steady stream of destroyers, cruisers, and carriers. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the Vigilant Watch as the human fleet assembled. He had never seen so many ships in one place. They formed up in precise formations, like pieces on a chessboard. Every captain knew exactly where to go and what to do. Captain, Lieutenant Amy Carter said, the Korthik are trying to contact. U.S. Jake nodded. Put them through. The face of War Prime Vexkar appeared on the screen. He was even larger than the other Korthik, with scars covering his armor and hatred burning in his eyes. Humans, he said, his voice like grinding metal. I am War Prime Vexkar of the Korthik Empire. You will surrender your world immediately, or we will take it by force. Jake looked at the alien commander without fear. War Prime, this is Captain Morrison of Earth Defense. You are in violation of the Treaty of Sol. Withdraw your fleet now, and there might still be a chance for peace. Vexkar laughed, a horrible sound. Peace? We did not come here for peace. We came to show the galaxy that humans are weak. Your homeworld will burn, and your species will serve the Korthik Empire. The treaty was clear, Jake said quietly. Attack Earth, face Oblivion. You still have time to turn back. We fear nothing from you, human. Tomorrow, your planet dies. The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at the empty screen. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. They all knew what was coming. President Katie Mitchell sat in the Oval Office, reading reports from across the galaxy. Korthik had made their intentions clear. There would be no negotiation, no compromise. They wanted to destroy Earth and enslave humanity. She looked at the document on her desk, the same Treaty of Soul that had kept Earth safe for 2 centuries. The words were simple and direct. Any unprovoked attack on Earth would result in the complete mobilization of human military forces. No exceptions. No mercy. Katie picked up the communication device that would connect her to every human settlement in the galaxy. When she spoke, her words would be heard on colonies spanning dozens of star systems. My fellow humans, she began, today the Korthik Empire has chosen to test our resolve by threatening our homeworld. They believe we are weak because we choose peace over war. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Throughout human space, people stopped what they were doing to listen. On mining stations and research outposts, in military bases and civilian colonies, humans heard their president's words. The Treaty of Soul was clear, Katie continued. Attack Earth, face Oblivion. The Korthik have made their choice. Now we make ours. I hereby declare a state of total war against the Korthik Empire. Every human ship, every human weapon, every human life is now dedicated to the defense of our homeworld. On the bridge of the Liberty, Admiral Stone listened to the president's speech. Around her, officers prepared for the largest battle in human history. The main screen showed the approaching Korthik fleet, still hours away, but closing fast. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, we now have over 8,000 human vessels converging on the Sol system, military and civilian combined. Stone smiled grimly. The Korthik had expected to find a few hundred defenders. Instead, they would face an armada larger than any force in galactic history. Send a message to all ships, she ordered, battle stations, combat spread formation, and remind every captain that we're not just defending Earth. We're defending the idea that humans cannot be intimidated. In deep space, more human ships continued to arrive. They came from every corner of human territory, their crews ready to die for their homeworld. The peaceful explorers and diplomats that other species knew were revealing themselves to be something far more dangerous. As the Korthik fleet entered the outer reaches of the solar system, they found not a defenseless world, but the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. 3,000 Korthik warships faced 10,000 human vessels, with more arriving every hour. War Prime Vexkar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Where had all these ships come from? Intelligence reports said humans had maybe a few hundred military vessels. Instead, he faced an enemy fleet that outnumbered his own. War Prime, his second-in-command, said nervously, perhaps we should reconsider. The humans have more ships than we expected. Vexkar snarled. We are Korthik. We do not retreat from inferior species. All ships, attack formation. We will crush them and take their world. But even as he gave the order, doubt crept into his mind. The human fleet was not just large, it was perfectly organized. Every ship knew its position. Every formation was precise. These were not frightened defenders. These were warriors ready for battle. The Korthik had wanted to test human resolve. They had wanted to see if the Treaty of Soul was real or just empty words. In a few hours, they would have their answer, and they would not like what they learned. The human fleet filled space around Earth like a wall of steel and fire. Admiral Lisa Stone stood on the bridge of the Liberty, watching as more ships arrived every minute. She had seen large fleets before, but nothing like this. The Terra Prime signal had awakened something that had been sleeping for 2 centuries. "Admiral," Commander Tony Garcia reported, "we now have 12,000 vessels in the system. The Korthic fleet is still outnumbered 4-1. Stone nodded, but her attention was focused on the tactical display. The Korthic ships were getting closer to Earth, and soon the battle would begin. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, even though she had hoped it would never come. "What's the status of our heavy units?" she asked. "The Dreadnought class ships are taking position in the outer defensive ring," Garcia replied. "The Korthic won't even know they exist until we start shooting." That was the secret that would shock the galaxy. For 200 years, while maintaining peaceful relations with other species, humanity had been building warships in hidden shipyards. Ships that were larger and more powerful than anything that Korthic had ever seen. Captain Rick Johnson commanded one of those secret weapons. The heavy cruiser Defiance was 3 times larger than any Korthic battleship, armed with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. His crew had trained for decades in secret, waiting for the day they might be needed. "Captain," his weapons officer called out, "all guns are charged and ready. The new plasma cannons are showing full power." Rick smiled grimly. The plasma cannons were another secret. Human scientists had been working on them for 50 years, perfecting designs that could punch through any known shield technology. The Korthic were about to become the first enemy to face them in actual combat. On Earth's surface, President Katie Mitchell watched the gathering fleet from the windows of the White House. She could see the lights of light, thousands of ships in the night sky, like new stars that had appeared to defend humanity's birthworld. Her military advisor, General Paul Anderson, stood beside her with a tablet showing fleet positions. "Madam President," he said quietly, "our forces are in position. The Korthic will reach weapons range in 2 hours. "And our allies?" Katie asked. "The Galactic Council is still debating what to do," Anderson replied. "Most species are too frightened to get involved. They want to see who wins before they pick." A sighed. Katie was not surprised. Humans had learned long ago that they could only rely on themselves. That was why they had built such a large fleet in secret. Other species talked about peace while preparing for war behind closed doors. Humans had done the same thing, but better. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, hidden bases that had been secret for decades suddenly came to life. Massive factories that had been disguised as mining operations began launching ships that no alien had ever seen before. Commander Nancy White was in charge of one of those secret bases. For 20 years, she had overseen the construction of humanity's most powerful weapons while pretending to mine asteroids. Now her ships were finally going to war. "All vessels, launch when ready," she ordered. "Target the Korthic fleet. Show them what humans can really do." The ships that emerged from the hidden bases were like nothing else in the galaxy. Sleek and deadly, they moved through space with a grace that made even human naval officers stare in amazement. These were the ships that would change everything. War Prime Vexkar watched his tactical display with growing concern. The human fleet was much larger than expected, but size was not everything. His ships had fought dozens of battles and won them all. Surely these peaceful humans could not match Korthic's skill in combat. "All ships, advance to attack position," he ordered. "Charge main weapons. We will destroy their fleet and then burn their world." But as the Korthic ships moved forward, something strange happened. The human fleet began to spread out, forming defensive lines that stretched across millions of kilometers of space. It was like watching a vast machine come to life, every piece moving with perfect precision. "War Prime," his tactical officer said nervously, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the human ships. Their weapons are much more powerful than our intelligence reports indicated. Vexcar snarled. Intelligence reports are for cowards. We will see how powerful their weapons are when we start shooting. The first shots of the battle came from long range. Korthic energy beams lanced out toward human ships, expecting to punch through shields and armor as they had done countless times before. Instead, the beams scattered harmlessly against defensive fields that seemed impossibly strong. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the Vigilant Watch as the battle began. The human fleet opened fire with weapons that lit up space. Like a second sun, plasma bolts and quantum torpedoes streaked toward the Korthic ships with devastating accuracy. "My God," Lieutenant Amy Carter whispered. "I had no idea we had weapons like that." Morrison nodded grimly. "Very few people did. We've been preparing for this day for 2 centuries, hoping it would never come. Now the Korthic get to see what happens when you threaten Earth." The first Korthic ships to die were destroyed so quickly that their crews never knew what hit them. Human plasma cannons tore through their shields like paper, while quantum torpedoes created explosions that could be seen from Earth's surface. War Prime. Vexcar stared in horror as entire squadrons of his ships vanished from the tactical display. The humans were not just fighting back, they were winning. Easily. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence said humans were weak." His second-in-command was frantically working at his controls, trying to understand what was happening. "War Prime, their weapons are far more advanced than anything we've seen. And their ships. Some of them are larger than our biggest dreadnoughts." On the bridge of the Liberty, Admiral Stone coordinated the battle with calm efficiency. She had studied Korthic tactics for years, learning their weaknesses and planning how to exploit them. Now all that preparation was paying off. "All ships execute battle plan Omega," she ordered. "Heavy units target their command vessels. Destroyers hit their flanks. Let's show them what human military doctrine really looks like." The human fleet moved like a living thing, each ship playing its part in a larger strategy. Korthic vessels that had dominated battles for decades found themselves outmaneuvered and outgunned by opponents they had underestimated. Captain Helen Brooks led her squadron of converted civilian ships into the fight. Her science vessel was not built for combat, but human engineers had mounted weapons on it that made it more dangerous than most military cruisers. "Remember," she told her fellow captains, "we're not just fighting for Earth, we're fighting to show the galaxy that humans will never back down when threatened." The civilian ships fought with a fury that shocked even their human allies. Miners and explorers who had never fired a shot in anger became deadly warriors defending their homeworld. They had no formal military training, but they had something more important: the absolute determination to protect Earth. As the battle continued, more human ships kept arriving. Secret weapons that had been hidden for decades revealed themselves. Space stations that had appeared to be research facilities opened up to reveal massive gun batteries. Even civilian freighters turned out to be armed with weapons that could destroy battleships. The Korthic fleet, which had seemed so powerful when it entered the system, was being systematically destroyed. Their energy shields could not stop human weapons. Their armor could not protect them from human firepower. Their tactics, perfected over centuries of conquest, were useless against human strategy. War-prone Vexcar realized with growing horror that he had led his fleet into a trap. The humans had not been peaceful because they were weak. They had been peaceful because they chose to be. Now that choice was over, and the Korthic were learning what human warfare really looked like. "All ships retreat," he ordered. "Fall back to the edge of the system." But it was too late. The human fleet had surrounded them completely. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The Korthic had come to destroy Earth, and now they were the ones facing destruction. From the command center of Arcturus Naval Base, Admiral Stone watched the battle with grim satisfaction. The Korthik had made the same mistake that many species made. They had confused human kindness with human weakness. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," she ordered. "Tell them the Battle of Sol is nearly over. The Korthik fleet is being destroyed as we speak. And remind them that the Treaty of Sol is not just words on paper. It's a promise backed by the most powerful military force in the galaxy." The sleeping giant that was human military might had finally awakened. And the galaxy would never be the same again. War Prime Vexkar watched his fleet die around him. In 3 hours of fighting, he had lost over half his ships to human weapons that seemed to come from nightmares. The proud Korthik fleet that had conquered dozens of worlds was being destroyed by an enemy they had thought was weak. "War Prime," his communications officer called out desperately, "the 4th battle group is gone. The 7th is requesting permission to surrender." Vexkar roared in fury. "Korthik do not surrender. All ships continue the attack. We will take their world or die trying." But even as he gave the order, he knew it was hopeless. The human fleet had revealed capabilities that no intelligence report had mentioned. Their ships were larger, their weapons more powerful, their tactics more sophisticated than anything the Korthak had faced before. Captain Rick Johnson guided the Defiance through the battle like a master artist painting with destruction. His heavy cruiser's plasma cannons fired again and again, each shot destroying another Korthik vessel. The enemy's energy shields, which had protected them in countless previous battles, were useless against human technology. "Captain," his tactical officer reported, "we've destroyed 17 enemy ships and taken no damage. Their weapons can't even scratch our armor." Rick nodded grimly. The Korthik had built their ships to fight other aliens, using energy weapons and simple projectiles. They had never faced plasma cannons that could burn through solid steel like it was paper, or quantum torpedoes that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. "Target the next battle group," he ordered. "Let's show them what happens when someone threatens Earth." Across the battlefield, human ships displayed a level of coordination that amazed even their own crews. Admiral Stone had planned this defense for decades, creating battle strategies that used every advantage human technology could provide. "All heavy units, advance to Grid 77, she commanded from the Liberty's bridge. "Destroyer squadrons, hit their flanks. Carrier groups, launch all fighters. Let's finish this." The human fighter pilots were led by Commander Tony Garcia, who had been waiting his whole career for a chance to test his skills against a real enemy. His squadron launched from the carrier Yorktown and dove into the battle with deadly precision. "All fighters, remember your training," Garcia called over the radio. "These aliens think they can attack our homeworld. Let's show them what human pilots can do." The Korthik had their own fighters, but they were no match for human technology and skill. Human fighters moved through space like deadly shadows, their weapons destroying enemy craft before the aliens even knew they were there. Lieutenant Susan Reed coordinated the defense from one of Earth's orbital battle stations. These massive weapons platforms had been disguised as research facilities for decades, hiding gun batteries that could destroy entire fleets. "All orbital defenses, open fire," she ordered. "Target their command ships first. Cut off their heads, and the body will die." Massive energy beams lanced out from the hidden battle stations, striking Korthik vessels with pinpoint accuracy. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before exploded in brilliant flashes of light. War Prime Vexkar felt fear for the first time in his life as his flagship shook under human fire. His bridge crew worked frantically at their controls, trying to find some way to fight back against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. "War Prime," his tactical officer said with terror in his voice, "their weapons are unlike anything we've ever Seen. Our shields can't stop them. Our armor can't protect us. How did they develop such technology? Vexcar had no answer. The Korthik had studied human space for years, watching their ships and learning their capabilities. But apparently, everything they had seen was a lie. The real human fleet had been hidden, waiting for someone to be foolish enough to attack Earth. Commander Ben Parker watched the battle from the Vigilant Watch with grim satisfaction. He had fought in the Centauri border wars, where human casualties had been heavy because they were fighting with one hand tied behind their backs. The politicians had demanded that humans use minimal force, trying to maintain their reputation as peaceful diplomats. But this was different. The Korthik had attacked Earth directly, and all restrictions were off. For the first time in 2 centuries, humans were fighting at full strength, using all their technology and skill without holding back. "Amy," he said to Lieutenant Carter, "take a good look at this battle. This is what happens when someone pushes humans too far." The young officer nodded, her eyes wide as she watched human ships systematically destroy the Korthik fleet. "I never imagined we were this powerful," she whispered. "Most people didn't," Parker replied. "That was the point. We wanted the galaxy to see us as peaceful explorers and helpful diplomats. But we never forgot that sometimes peace has to be defended with force." On Earth's surface, people gathered in the streets to watch the battle in the sky above. The lights of exploding ships were visible even in daylight, and everyone knew they were witnessing history. For the first time since joining the Galactic Council, humanity was at war. President Katie Mitchell stood on the White House lawn, surrounded by reporters and government officials. The questions came fast and urgent. "Madam President, where did all these ships come from? How long has humanity been building this fleet in secret? What will this mean for Earth's relationship with other species?" Katie raised her hand for silence. When she spoke, her voice was calm but filled with steel. The Treaty of Seoul was signed 200 years ago. It contained a simple promise: attack Earth and face the full might of human military power. Today, the Korthik Empire chose to test that promise. They are learning that humans always keep their word. In the asteroid belt, Commander Nancy White watched as her secret factories launched the last of their hidden ships. For 20 years, she had built weapons of war while pretending to mine rocks. Now those weapons were finally being used for their intended purpose. "All ships, final attack wave," she ordered. "Let's make sure none of the Korthik escape to threaten another world." The ships that emerged from the hidden bases were humanity's most advanced designs. Sleek and deadly, they moved through space with impossible speed and grace. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a planet, and they were all aimed at what remained of the Korthik fleet. War Prime Vexcar realized that he was about to die. His flagship was surrounded by human vessels, all of them firing at once. His shields were failing, his armor was cracking, and his crew was preparing for the end. "War Prime," his second-in-command said quietly, "perhaps we should have listened to the warnings about the Treaty of Seoul." Vexcar laughed bitterly. "The humans were cleverer than we thought. They let us believe they were weak while building the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. We came here expecting to find frightened prey. Instead, we found the most dangerous predators the galaxy has ever known." A massive explosion shook the flagship as human weapons found their target. Vexcar looked at his tactical display one last time and saw that fewer than 300 of his ships remained. In 6 hours, the humans had destroyed 90% of the most powerful fleet the Korthik Empire had ever assembled. "Send a message to all surviving ships," he ordered. "Surrender to the humans. Maybe they will show us the mercy we would not have shown them." But there would be no mercy. Admiral Stone had her orders from President Mitchell herself. No Korthik ship was to leave the Sol system alive. The galaxy had to understand that attacking Earth meant death, not just defeat. All ships continue firing until every enemy vessel is destroyed, Stone commanded. The Treaty of Soul promised oblivion for anyone who attacked Earth. Today, we keep that promise. The last Korthic ships died in brilliant explosions that lit up the solar system. War Prime Vexcar's flagship was among them, vaporized by a quantum torpedo that left nothing but scattered atoms floating in space. When the battle was over, the human fleet hung in space around Earth like a protective shell. 12,000 ships had answered the Terra Prime call, and not one of them had been destroyed. The Korthic fleet, which had seemed so powerful when it entered the system, was completely gone. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Vigilant Watch and watched the cleanup begin. Human ships were already moving to scan for survivors and collect debris. There would be no Korthic prisoners, because there were no Korthic survivors. Captain, Lieutenant Amy Carter said softly, "It's over. We won." Morrison nodded slowly. "Yes, we won. But this is just the beginning. The galaxy is about to learn what humans are really capable of when we stop being polite." The Battle of Soul was over in less than 8 hours. 3,000 Korthic warships had been completely destroyed by a human fleet that took no casualties at all. It was the most one-sided victory in galactic history, and it changed everything. The peaceful, diplomatic humans that other species thought they knew had revealed themselves to be the most formidable military power the galaxy had ever seen. The Treaty of Soul was not just words on paper. It was a promise backed by overwhelming force, and now everyone in the galaxy knew it. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in the organization's 1,000-year history. Representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as Ambassador Carl Jensen stood at the center of the great chamber. Holographic display showing the complete destruction of the Korthic fleet floating above his head. "As you can see," Jensen said calmly, "the Battle of Soul lasted exactly 7 hours and 43 minutes. 3,000 Korthic warships entered our system with the intention of conquering Earth. 0 Korthic ships survived the encounter." Silence in the chamber was deafening. Species that had known humanity for 2 centuries stared at the battle footage with disbelief. The peaceful diplomats and helpful explorers they thought they knew had revealed themselves to be something far more dangerous. "This is impossible," whispered the Altarian representative. "Our intelligence reports said humans had maybe 500 military vessels. Where did 12,000 ships come from?" Jensen smiled coldly. The Treaty of Soul was very clear about the consequences of attacking Earth. Did you think those were empty words? Humanity has spent 2 centuries preparing for this day, hoping it would never come. The Korthic chose to test our resolve. This is the result. On Earth, President Katie Mitchell addressed the planet and the galaxy from the Oval Office. Her words were broadcast to every human colony and monitored by alien intelligence services throughout known space. "My fellow humans, and to those aliens who are listening," she began, "today we have defended our homeworld against unprovoked aggression. The Korthic Empire chose to ignore the Treaty of Soul and attack Earth. They have paid the price for their arrogance." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "Let me be clear to every species in the galaxy. Humanity desires peace. We have worked for 2 centuries to build relationships based on cooperation and mutual respect. But we will never allow anyone to threaten our people or our worlds." In the ruins of what had been the Korthic fleet, human salvage ships worked to collect debris and search for evidence of alien technology. Admiral Lisa Stone coordinated the operation from the Liberty, making sure that every piece of wreckage was cataloged and analyzed. "Admiral," Commander Tony Garcia reported, "we found data cores from several Korthic command ships. Their military records show they've been planning this attack for years. Stone nodded grimly. Send everything to intelligence. I want to know if any other species were involved in this plan. And Garcia, make sure our findings are shared with the Galactic Council. Let everyone see what the Korthik really intended. The intelligence files recovered from the Korthik ships revealed the full scope of their plans. They had not just intended to conquer Earth. They had planned to enslave humanity and use human colonies as bases for further expansion. The attack on Earth was meant to be the first step in a campaign to dominate the entire galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison was promoted to Admiral and given command of the new Sol Defense Network. The battle had proven that Earth needed permanent protection, and the hidden military capabilities revealed during the fight were now being organized into the most powerful defensive force in galactic history. Admiral Morrison, President Mitchell, said during his promotion ceremony, "Your warning saved Earth and possibly the entire galaxy. The Korthik intended to use our world as a launching point for conquest. Your courage prevented that from happening." Morrison accepted the promotion with typical human humility. "I was just doing my job, Madam President. Every human in the fleet did their duty when Earth was threatened." But privately, Morrison knew that the Battle of Sol had changed everything. Humanity could no longer pretend to be a peaceful species that avoided conflict. The galaxy had seen what humans could do when pushed too far, and that knowledge would reshape interstellar politics for generations to come. The revelation of humanity's true military strength sent shockwaves throughout. Alien civilizations, species that had been expanding their territories, suddenly found themselves reconsidering their plans. The humans they had dismissed as harmless diplomats were actually the most dangerous military force in known space. Commander Nancy White was put in charge of reorganizing the secret shipyards that had been revealed during the battle. The hidden bases that had built humanity's war fleet could no longer remain secret, but they could be expanded and improved. "We're not hiding anymore," she told her staff during their first open planning meeting. "The galaxy knows what we're capable of now. Our job is to make sure we stay ahead of anyone who might want to test us again." The Galactic Council faced its own crisis as members struggled to understand the new balance of power. Ambassador Jensen found himself in the unusual position of being both feared and respected by species that had previously seen him as just another diplomat. The question before this council, Jensen told the assembled representatives, is simple. Do you want humanity as a friend or as an enemy? We have shown what happens to those who choose to be our enemies. We prefer to have friends. Some species immediately moved to strengthen their ties with humanity. The Centaurian Republic, which had fought alongside humans in border conflicts, offered a formal military alliance. The Tau Ceti colonies requested human protection against aggressive neighbors, but other species began planning their own military buildups, frightened by the revelation of human power. Arms dealers throughout the galaxy found themselves overwhelmed with orders for new weapons and ships as everyone tried to catch up with human technology. Captain Helen Brooks was given command of a new exploration fleet, but with a very different mission than before. Instead of just seeking new worlds and making contact with alien species, her ships would serve as a visible reminder of human power throughout the galaxy. "Remember," she told her captains, "we're explorers first and warriors second. But every species that sees our ships needs to understand that humanity is not to be underestimated." The economic effects of the battle were immediate and far-reaching. Human colonies that had been struggling to compete with alien traders suddenly found themselves in high demand. Everyone wanted to do business with the species that had destroyed the Korthik fleet so completely. Human technology, which had been dismissed as primitive by many aliens, was suddenly recognized as the most advanced in the galaxy. Species that had refused to trade with humans now offered massive sums for access to human weapons and ships. But President Mitchell was careful not to let humanity's new power go to their heads. "We are not conquerors," she reminded her military. "Leaders, we are defenders. We will use our strength to protect the innocent and maintain peace, not to build an empire." The Treaty of Seoul was rewritten and expanded with new clauses that reflected humanity's revealed capabilities. The document now included specific warnings about the consequences of attacking any human world, not just Earth. The message was clear. Humanity would defend all their people with the same fury they had shown at Seoul. Admiral Stone was put in charge of the new Human Defense Force, a military organization that combined all human military assets under one command. For the first time in their history, humans had a unified military that could respond to threats anywhere in their territory. "Our mission is simple," Stone told her officers. "We keep the peace by being strong enough that no one wants to break it. The galaxy has seen what happens when someone attacks us. Our job is to make sure they never forget that lesson." The Battle of Seoul became a turning point in galactic history. The peaceful, diplomatic humans that other species thought they knew had revealed themselves to be the most formidable military power in known space. The galaxy would never be the same. Years later, when young aliens learned about the great powers of the galaxy, they were taught about the human species with a mixture of respect and fear. The lesson was always the same. Humans were peaceful because they chose to be, not because they had to be. And anyone who mistook human kindness for human weakness would face the same fate as the Korthek Empire. The Treaty of Seoul had been clear. From the beginning, attack Earth, face Oblivion. The Korthek had chosen to test those words, and they had learned that humans always keep their promises. The galaxy remembered that lesson, and it shaped every interaction with humanity for generations to conduct in the depths of space. Monitoring stations like the Vigilant Watch continued their quiet vigil, watching for threats that might come from the stars. The men and women who staffed them knew that their job was more important than ever. They were the early warning system for a species that had proven they would fight to the death to protect their homeworld. The message echoed across the galaxy, carried by traders and diplomats, soldiers and scientists. Humanity was no longer the peaceful junior partner in galactic affairs. They were a power to be respected, feared, and never underestimated. The treaty was clear, and the galaxy had learned to take human promises very seriously indeed.